My family kicked me out of the house because of my golden sister's whining. Later, they all regretted it. When my family kicked me out, it wasn't because I failed them. It was because I refused to shrink for my sister's spotlight. Her name is Vanessa. The golden girl, the one with a flawless Instagram feed, a modest but successful fashion and wellness brand, and a perfectly crafted persona. She was the pride of my parents, the curated embodiment of the kind of success they wanted to show off at church potlucks and holiday dinners. Me? I was the other one. The spare. They never said it out loud, but I felt it in the way they introduced us to people. This is Vanessa, she runs that online brand, remember? The one we told you about? And then, an awkward glance toward me. And this is, our son. No name. No job title. Just filler. I didn't resent Vanessa at first. Growing up, we weren't exactly close, but we weren't enemies either. She liked attention, I liked quiet. She joined pageants, I read books. She wanted applause. I just wanted space. But that changed when her brand took off. And it got worse when I stopped playing along. The incident that broke everything started small, as these things often do. Vanessa had launched a new product line, scented candles with names like Serenity Bloom and Wild Lavender Mist. She wanted to shoot a promotional video at the house, our parents' house, where I was still living at the time. I was 24. Working 2 jobs. Saving to move out. Quietly rebuilding after a rough college experience. I kept to myself and paid rent. I didn't ask for much. But suddenly, I was in the way. "Can you stay out of the living room on Sunday?" my mom asked casually one night at dinner. "Vanessa's filming. It's important." "Sure," I said. "What time?" "All day." I blinked. "That's not really fair. I live here too." My dad looked up from his phone. "You know how hard she works. One day isn't going to kill you." I tried to explain that I had work to do. That I wasn't trying to interfere. That maybe, just maybe, this wasn't a hotel where one child got full access and the other was treated like a tenant. But the more I pushed back, the more irritated they got. And then Vanessa stepped in. "It's not like you're doing anything that matters," she said with a smile. "I mean, no offense, but your room looks like a storage closet. You're not exactly inspiring the aesthetic." It hit me harder than I expected. Because in that moment, I realized they all agreed. And worse, they didn't even try to hide it. 2 days later, I came home from work and found a letter on my bed. Typed. Printed. Signed. "As of this date, we are asking you to vacate the premises within 30 days. This decision has been made in the interest of maintaining a harmonious environment and allowing Vanessa's business to thrive without unnecessary conflict." I read it 3 times. Then I read it again. It didn't make sense. No conversation. No warning. Just a formal eviction, by my own parents, because I had the audacity to inconvenience the family star. I took it downstairs, shaking. "What is this?" I asked. My mom didn't even flinch. "It's what's best," she said. "You've made things uncomfortable for everyone. Maybe this is the push you need." "I pay rent," I said. "I do my part." What did I do that was so wrong? Vanessa appeared at the top of the stairs. "This house is part of my brand now," she said. "And your vibe just doesn't fit." She actually said, "Your vibe doesn't fit." Like I was an accessory that clashed with her mood board. My father stood behind the counter, arms crossed. "You're a grown man," he said. "Act like one." So I did. I packed my bags. And I left. I moved into a tiny basement studio across town. Concrete walls, no windows, one hot plate and a mini fridge that hummed loud enough to wake me up at night. It wasn't glamorous. But it was mine. And in that silence, away from the curated perfection and the constant judgment, I started to rebuild. I took on more freelance work. Writing gigs. Content editing. Technical documentation, nothing flashy, but steady. I got faster. Sharper. Better at navigating contracts and cold emails, and the kind of hustle Vanessa never had to learn because her success had come prepackaged with praise. I built a client list. Then a portfolio. Then something bigger. By the time a year had passed, I was operating a small content agency out of a co-working space downtown, 3 part-time contractors, 15 regular clients, and monthly revenue that made me quietly proud. I didn't post about it. Didn't send updates to my parents. Didn't gloat. I just worked. And for the first time in a long time, I felt real momentum. Real worth. Not because someone handed it to me, but because I earned it. Then, 2 years after they kicked me out, I got a call. It was my mom. I let it go to voicemail. Later, I listened to the message. "Hi honey, it's Mom. Just checking in. Haven't heard from you in a while. Vanessa's going through a bit of a tough time with the brand and, well, we were wondering if you had any advice. Or time to chat. Call me?" I stared at the screen. And laughed. Not out of cruelty. Just disbelief. Because the same people who once told me I was in the way now needed me. I didn't return my mom's call. Not out of spite. But because I needed to sit with the message, and everything it implied. 2 years earlier, they had handed me a printed letter and a smile, convinced I was the problem standing between them and their precious golden child success. Now, they needed me. The irony would have been funny if it didn't sting so much. I saved the voicemail, turned my phone over, and got back to work. But the calls kept coming. A week later, it was my dad. "We were just thinking about you. Your mother says you're doing well." "That's good to hear." Another pause. "Vanessa's had a complicated month. Something about a vendor breach. PR stuff. Not sure. But you always had a good head for this kind of thing. Thought maybe you'd have a few ideas." Ideas? When I was still living at home, I offered them all the time. About her site's layout. Her brand's inconsistent messaging. Her over-reliance on the same influencer loop. Vanessa always brushed me off. "You wouldn't get it," she'd say. "It's not just about the content. It's about energy." Now, apparently, my energy was in demand. I finally texted back. One sentence. "Me. Hope she figures it out." I expected that to be the end of it. It wasn't. 3 days later, I got an email. From Vanessa. No subject line. Just, "Hey. I know we haven't talked in a while. I heard you're doing well. Congrats. I was wondering if we could meet up. I could use your input on something." I stared at it for a long time. Then hit delete. I didn't hear from any of them again for almost a month. And then it started unraveling. First, a news story broke on a niche influencer gossip blog. Vanessa Stone sent line under fire for toxic ingredient claims. I saw it by accident. A retweet from someone I followed. The story wasn't explosive, but it was the kind of slow, reputational leak that eats away at trust. A few customers had reported rashes. One claimed her candle triggered an asthma attack. There were screenshots. One former employee even hinted at Vanessa bullying her out of the brand. The comments were brutal. "Always thought she seemed fake. The vibe was off and now we know why." Unfollowing. Her follower count dropped by 20,000 in 2 days. The next week, 3 of her largest wholesale vendors backed out. Then came the real hit. A major lifestyle magazine retracted a glowing profile on her from the previous year, citing undisclosed concerns related to product integrity. Just like that, the house of filters started to shake. I didn't reach out. But Mara, a mutual friend from college who had followed Vanessa for years, messaged me. "Hey, weird question. Is your sister okay?" "Why?" She DM'd me out of the blue. Asking if I wanted to collab on a rebrand. "I'm a teacher. I have 900 followers. I think she's spiraling." That's when I knew they were in freefall. Then one afternoon, I got a knock on my apartment door. It was my father. I hadn't seen him in person since the day I left. He looked older. Tired. Wore the same smug, we know what's best face I remembered, but now it had cracks in it. Can I come in? He asked. I hesitated. Then stepped aside. He didn't compliment the apartment. Didn't ask how I'd been. Just sat down and exhaled like the weight of their perfect world had finally become too much. She's not doing well, he said. I didn't respond. She's lost 3 contracts in 2 weeks. And the press, well, you've probably seen it. I nodded. She needs help. She needed help 2 years ago, I said. You kicked me out so she could light a scented candle in peace. He winced. That wasn't our best moment. I laughed, short, sharp. It wasn't a moment. It was a decision. He looked at me. She's still your sister. No, I said quietly. She was never mine. She was yours. Your project. Your pride. Your priority. He flinched again. I waited for an apology. It didn't come. Instead, he said, we don't know how to fix this. That's not my problem. He stood to leave. But before he reached the door, he turned back. I know you don't owe us anything. But if you ever change your mind, she could really use your guidance. And then he left. I closed the door behind him and just stood there for a while. Not angry. Not triumphant. Just, hollow. Because when the apology finally came, it wasn't even an apology. It was another request. Another attempt to draft me back into a world I never belonged in. But this time, I had the power to say no. About 2 weeks after my dad's visit, I got another email. From Vanessa this time. Subject line, I'm sorry. It was short. No hashtags. No branding voice. No styled signature block. Just words. I know I can't take back what happened. But I'm sorry I made you feel like you didn't belong. I was scared, and selfish, and I thought I had to protect what I built, no matter what. I pushed you out so I wouldn't have to look at the parts of myself that didn't fit the narrative I was selling. You were always better at this stuff than me. Smarter. Clearer. You actually built something. I just repackaged things. I'm sorry I didn't say that sooner. I read it twice. 3 times. It didn't fix anything. But it was the first real thing she'd ever said to me in years. No performance. Just a sentence that sounded like it cost her something. I didn't reply right away. Instead, I thought about the years between us. The quiet ones. The ones where she floated effortlessly through high school while I struggled with grades and felt invisible. The ones where she smiled in family photos while I stood just off to the side, cropped out by attention that was never mine. The time she got an internship through a friend of the brand, while I was scraping money together to pay for second-hand textbooks. She didn't just outshine me. She helped engineer the light. But that email. That was the first time she admitted it. I replied the next morning. I appreciate the apology. It means more than you probably think. But I need you to know something, I didn't survive what you did to me because I'm stronger. I survived because I had to. You had a safety net. I was the net. You don't get to walk back in and pretend we're okay. But I'm open to talking. As equals. As people. Not as your shadow. I sent it. No response came that day. Or the next. Instead, I got a call from Mara again. Okay, she said breathlessly, without even saying hello. What did you say to her? I responded to her apology. She's been off social media for 2 days. No posts. No stories. Nothing. That's not like her. I guess she's taking time to think. Mara was quiet for a moment. Do you think she'll bounce back from this? I didn't know how to answer. Vanessa had always been talented. Ambitious. But she was also brittle. Her success was so heavily tied to image, to perfection, to the constant upkeep of a life that didn't have room for imperfection. But now? Now the cracks were visible. And no amount of filters could hide them. A week later, she called. I didn't recognize the number, but the voice was unmistakable. "Hey," Vanessa said. "I'm not calling for anything. I didn't know what else to do. I waited. I've been thinking a lot. About everything. About how I built my brand on this idea that I had it all figured out. And the truth is, I never did. I was scared all the time. Of being irrelevant. Of failing. I thought if I could keep everything looking perfect, no one would see how messy it really was. And when you started pointing that out, even in small ways, it terrified me. Because you were right." She paused. "I didn't just push you out. I erased you." I closed my eyes. That was the word. Erased. We talked for nearly an hour. Not about fixing things. Not about business. Just about the silence between us. She admitted things I never thought she'd say. About how she'd felt threatened by my quiet competence. About how she resented that I never needed to be liked the way she did. "I spent so much time building a following," she said, "and you just went out and built a life." That line stayed with me. Because it was the first time she acknowledged what I had built. Not a product line. Not a brand. But a life. Something real. After we hung up, I didn't feel triumphant. I felt tired. But I also felt something else, released. For so long, I'd held on to the bitterness like a safety blanket. The injustice of it all. The feeling that I'd been robbed of a fair chance by the people who should have had my back. But now? Now I could set it down. Not because everything was okay. But because I didn't need to carry it anymore. The next week, she took down her website. Archived her Instagram. She posted one final message. A plain black background, white text. "Sometimes, you build something and realize it was never really you. Thank you to everyone who supported me. I need to find what's next, off camera." It went viral. Not because it was dramatic. But because it was honest. For the first time, people saw her, not the brand. Just her. And weirdly, they respected her more for it. When Vanessa took everything down, her website, her brand partnerships, the curated social feed she'd spent years building, the silence that followed was almost disorienting. No more photos of pristine brunch plates or ocean view yoga poses. No more product launches. Just, nothing. A vacuum where her identity had lived for so long. And for the first time in years, my parents couldn't brag about her. They didn't know how to function without that talking point. She'd been their success story, their trophy, the living embodiment of, "We raised them right." Now she was just a person. Still talented. Still flawed. But no longer shining on command. I didn't hear from them for weeks after Vanessa and I talked. Then one Sunday, my mom called. "Your father and I were talking," she said, tentative. "We know we didn't handle things well. Back then." "Back then?" I repeated. "I mean, when you left. We regret how it happened." "Do you regret it because of what it did to me, or because Vanessa isn't marketable right now?" She went quiet. "I'm not trying to be cruel," I said. "But I need you to understand something, you didn't just handle things poorly. You made a choice. You chose her. Over me." She exhaled, like she'd been holding that breath for a long time. "I think we were scared," she said finally. "Scared that if we didn't give her everything, she'd fall apart. And you never needed us the way she did." "I did need you," I said. "I just didn't say it. Because I knew you wouldn't hear it anyway." There was nothing left to say after that. She didn't ask to see me. I didn't offer. But for the first time, the silence didn't feel like punishment. It felt like a boundary. And I was okay with that. Vanessa, on the other hand, didn't disappear. She started reaching out now and then, texts mostly. Small things. Articles she thought I'd like. Photos of a dog she was thinking of adopting. One night, she sent me a photo of a half-painted wall and said, "Tried to hang a shelf. It fell and took half the drywall with it. Please tell me this gets easier." I laughed out loud. Because it was real. No filter. No branding voice. Just a woman standing in front of a mess she created, trying to figure out what came next. Eventually, we met up again. Not for anything serious. Just lunch. A quiet corner cafe. No attention. No fanfare. She looked different. Not bad, just softer. Less polished. And for the first time, she didn't spend the entire conversation performing. She asked about my work. My team. What kind of clients I liked best. She listened when I talked. And when she talked about trying to figure out her next steps, there was no arrogance. No expectation. Just honesty. I'm scared I don't know who I am without the brand, she admitted. That's okay, I said. You get to figure it out now. On your terms. She smiled. I think I'd like that. Later that night, I got a message from her. Thanks for meeting me. I know it'll take time to earn your trust again. I'm not rushing it. I just want you to know I see you now. And I'm proud of you. Not because you succeeded. But because you didn't let what we did destroy you. I stared at it for a long time. Then I replied. It did destroy me. For a while. But I built something better after. And I'm still building. You can too. Meanwhile, I started hearing whispers from the extended family. My aunt reached out. I heard what happened, she said. I wish I'd spoken up back then. We all saw how one-sided things were. But no one wanted to rock the boat. She paused. You're not invisible anymore. They see it now. I didn't say anything. Because I hadn't built a life to be seen. I'd built it to survive. And now, I was building it to thrive. One afternoon, I stood in the middle of my office, real office, not a coffee shop or a borrowed desk, and looked at the corkboard we kept by the door. Client milestones. Thank you cards. A handwritten note from one of our first hires, thanks for betting on me when no one else would. I added Vanessa's message to the board. Not as a trophy. But as a reminder. That people change. That sometimes, they see the damage only after the dust has cleared. And if you're lucky, if you're strong enough to wait without hardening, you might just find something human on the other side of the wreckage. 1 year after I was kicked out, I signed the lease on my own apartment. 2 years later, I started my agency. 3 years later, I owned a small home with a backyard, 2 employees, and no fear of the floor falling out from under me. By the 4th year, the apology had arrived. Not just from Vanessa. But from my parents. It came in the form of a handwritten letter. Unusual, considering they'd never been the sentimental type. My dad was always more of a money is love guy. My mom, she expressed affection through control. But this letter? It was different. We've been thinking a lot about the past, my mother wrote. And how quickly we made you feel like a stranger in your own home. You never asked for much. You never demanded the spotlight. And we punished you for it. We made the mistake of believing that the loudest success was the most important one. We were wrong. It was signed by both of them. No strings. No request for a call. Just, a letter. A quiet one. I didn't cry when I read it. Didn't even feel angry. Just tired. Because closure, it turns out, doesn't always come with fireworks. Sometimes it's just a weight slipping off your shoulders. Not because someone finally said the right thing, but because you're not carrying it anymore. I didn't respond. Not out of cruelty. But because I didn't need anything else from them. They had said their piece. And I had moved on. Vanessa, though, she stuck around. She didn't rebuild her brand. Instead, she went back to school. Took courses in community development. Nonprofit work. Volunteered at a food bank downtown. She didn't post about it. Didn't rebrand her humility. She just did the work. And every now and then, she'd text me something small. An article. A question. A memory. Sometimes we'd grab coffee. Sometimes we wouldn't. There was no pressure. No performance. Just presence. And that was enough. One afternoon, we sat at a park bench, watching people jog by, when she asked, "Do you think they ever really understood what they did?" I took a breath. "I think they understood they lost you. And I think, for them, that was enough." She nodded. "I just don't know if I'll ever really forgive myself." "You don't have to," I said. "Forgiveness isn't always a transaction. Sometimes it's just choosing not to hold something anymore." She looked at me. "I don't know how you made peace with it all." "I didn't," I said. "I made peace with myself. That was enough." Years passed. I got married. Bought a bigger house. Hired more staff. Vanessa eventually started her own nonprofit, a local initiative for supporting women in recovery. She didn't name it after herself. Didn't do interviews. Just quietly built something worth building. We still weren't close in the way siblings in movies are. But we were honest. And maybe that's better. Every now and then, my parents reached out. A birthday card. A forwarded article. An invitation to dinner that I always politely declined. I wasn't angry anymore. But I didn't need them back in my life to feel complete. They were part of my story. But not the part one was still writing. And one day, sitting in my office, I opened the drawer where I kept things I didn't look at often. Old notes. Letters. Photos. And that eviction notice, folded and creased and yellowing at the edges. I unfolded it. Read the cold, careful language. Then looked around the space I had built. My own. Earned. Not gifted. And I smiled. Because I had survived it. Outgrown it. Outbuilt it. And now, they were the ones on the outside. Not out of spite. But because that's what they chose. And I had simply respected their choice. Closure isn't loud. It's not dramatic. It's not even satisfying, always. Sometimes, it's just the quiet certainty that you no longer need what you once begged for. And in that certainty, there is peace. There is pride. And there is freedom. Thank you all for watching the video, and see you soon.